Alright, I'm gonna do something never before done in a review. I'm gonna start off with the rating. I know it's sickening, but I'm gonna do a decent amount of complaining so you should know how I feel about this project beforehand. This show is a 7 out of 10 in my opinion.
Ben, what the fuck, dude? What do you mean? How can you rate it so high? It's filled with tasteless race swaps and body-positive villains. They barely even show Batman. He's like a sidekick in his own story. This is DEI Batman and the betrayal to his character. Bob Kane will be rolling in his grave.
Hey, relax. In my previous video, I said that since this show is clearly disconnected from any current continuity that we currently know for Batman, that I will be critiquing it purely based off of entertainment value. And you know what? Entertained I was. If you put away your distaste for the diversity and look at the series and the characters for how the story is trying to present them, I think it makes for a good watch. Is this the greatest Batman story ever told? No. Is it one of the better Batman stories out there? Also no. But it is able to stand on its own as a good Batman story, in my opinion. I mean, look, one of the executive producers is J.J. Abrams, and we all love what he's done with the franchise that he's gotten his hands on, right? I would say this show is like the Little Caesars of Batman stories. It's good when you don't have someone in your ear telling you it ain't.
Dude, I'm not watching this DEI garbage. Why change the original designs? They're pandering to the imaginary modern audience.
Okay, you're not wrong. I do think that is what's happening. Let me say this. Let's say they made all the characters comic accurate by contemporary standards. The story would still be good, and there would be a lot less complaining on Twitter, mind you, because outside of these superficial changes, and they really are superficial, there isn't really much to complain about. But complain I shall. Thankfully, I was able to watch the show during my regular shift at work. My job is cool like that, neener. And I have to say, even though there were definitely liberties taken with some of the characters, it was a pretty straightforward Batman story. And based on how it ended, leaves a very good possibility for a season 2, which I'm all here for. Man, why are all these niggas wide, bruh? Of all design choices, it's so bad that they chose to make these people fat. Granted, it's not like Alfred is going around punching people, but it just seems like a poor choice. And while I know there are many people who may not like that Montoya is so rotund, hey, you don't see me complaining. But it is weird to me that they made her so wide. Like at times she looks like a plump Latina, and in others she's literally Kingpin. What do they mean by this? And there are people pissed that Barbara is black. I mean, she would have to be if Jim is. Hey, Google, did people like the 2021 Batman film?
On the website commonsensemedia.org, they say, but overall this film is amazing. I call it the best Batman film ever, and I've seen every single one. I'm a big Batman fan, and I can say that this is a must-see even if you don't really like Batman. Still see it. So in the end, I'd recommend this film for anyone 12 and over.
You heard it from our future overlord herself. So what's the problem?
Race swap!
Okay, you're right. I dislike it as much as you, but outside of her skin tone, is Barbara misrepresented as a character? What about Jim? No? What about Montoya? Outside of being... In what way is she misrepresented? I'll get to Harley later. Alright, let's get something clear. This is an Elseworld story if there ever was one. Also, if you're looking for some deep philosophical dive into the pathos of Batman and his rogue gallery, this isn't the place, sorta. The story doesn't actually give Batman the amount of time you'd expect from a Batman series, even though he is a character with the most screen time out of the entire show.
What the fuck? A Batman show that isn't solely focused on Batman? You must be kidding. This show is DOA. Don't waste your time. This is DEI crap. Put a chicken in and make her lame and gay.
Relax. Now, don't get me wrong. This is a Batman show through and through, but this show juggles multiple main characters, and I think it does it pretty well. I may be in the minority, but I like that this story has Batman being sort of a Deus Ex Batman-kina. I'll be leaving. Throughout the series, they give him enough time to shine, but also retain his aloofness, his detectiveness, and overall his presence as a Caped Crusader, still being seen as sort of an urban legend or some kind of crazed vigilante. I mean, we know Batman. It's really hard to get his character wrong. But I do think a Batman story can really shine when the spotlight is given to the supporting characters, especially the villains.
No, Ben, you don't get it. There needs to be more Batman.
No, I do get it. But wouldn't you also want to care about the world that he inhabits? Again, We all know Batman. There isn't really anything new that can be told about him. And it's not as if he stays stagnant throughout the show. We get a good amount of time with Bruce and Batman, less Bruce, more Batman. But we watch as he goes from a one-man crusade against the villainy of Gotham to being able to bring more people into his sphere to help him fight crime more effectively. This is definitely a story of a younger Batman forming the bonds he needs in order to have a better chance at getting the baddies, and the trust of the local police as well as the people. It's pretty good. I believe what makes our heroes shine the most are villains that shine as well. Let me explain. The core of the Batman mythos is mental unwellness. A lot of his rogues aren't actually villains. Sometimes they're just not well in the head. Every episode starts with introducing the new villain, Batman's first encounter with them, and the episode follows Batman doing detective work in order to figure out how to defeat them. Pretty cut and dry stuff. And I have to say, it is really engaging. I especially loved how they played up Firefly or Firebug to literally be a crazed arsonist. I mean, he is a crazed arsonist, but sans jetpack. Really grounding the sword in the 40s, huh? He even gave himself up willingly after he got his fixation out of his system. Not that it worked, but hey, with Clayface, instead of the mud monster that we're used to, it was decided to depict him as an actor struggling with being unable to get leading roles in movies for having a less than desirable face, which led him to take drastic measures in the realm of plastic surgery, resulting in him becoming a freak and sought out revenge on the people he perceived to be the source of his anguish. Pretty good villain. I would have to say the weakest entries in the series would be episodes 1 and 5 when they introduced Madam Penguin, and we'll get to her. And it just so happens to be the characters that the writers took the most liberties with.
See, that's what happens when you put a chick in it and make her lame and gay. Why would you keep watching the show after they made Penguin a woman? Cringe.
Okay, so I'll give you this. The Penguin being a woman is cringe. Why? Because they literally just made the Penguin character and made it a woman. Would the story be exactly the same if it were a dude? Yes. Are people allowed to dislike the show for this reason alone? Also yes. But did her gender detract from the story? The answer to that is no. Again, people, I've put down my pitchfork and decided to critique this show purely on its own merit. I would say, think of it like this, and I've already stated it before, if these characters were all comic accurate, would this be a different story? If the answer is no, then pass me the popcorn, alright? Now, I have to talk about what I really didn't like about this show, so my pitchfork is now at half-mast. Harley Quinn. At least they got the part where she's a shrink right. But her becoming a villain because she's fed up with rich people, scratch that, rich men? Come on, man. This is cringe. I got a whiff of the anti-man, anti-capitalist rhetoric in her earlier encounters with Bruce, and it really did leave a bad taste in my mouth. I can't let this show slide with that. Harley Quinn was ass. And it really didn't help that they made her Asian, changed her costume, and made her a lesbian. My goodness, these writers just couldn't help themselves. Guys, look, she hates the rich. But to go as far as kidnapping and psychological torture and lining her pockets all the way through, it's laughable, but I'm not laughing. Yeah, the weakest villain of the series. I mean, we already know that she's going to be a bad guy, but if you haven't introduced the Joker, how can you introduce Harley? I know the feminists don't like to hear this, but there isn't Harley without Joker. I mean, literally, her origin is deeply rooted in Joker's machinations. It just doesn't work. You can have the character Harleen Quinzel become evil, sure, but deranged? Gay? That's one too many liberties for this character specifically, and one too many lesbians for the 1940s, thank you. I want answers. What I think would have worked better would be a Harley that worked closely with the police and interviewed Batman's rogues as he sent them in, slowly losing touch with reality as she began to try to understand why it is that these people would turn to a life of crime, with her arc ending with her sympathizing with the wrong rogue and her having to pay with it with her own sanity. It would also help if they gave her some kind of character flaw that would make her more susceptible to being influenced by said rogues to where she would eventually break and begin her reign as something. But Harley, she wouldn't be, and that's a Jokerless origin. To have her already be crazy, or not even crazy, but calculated, psychotic, is kind of a cop-out in my book, and the reason for it being, oh, I listen to men complain all the time. It's so sickening. Well, time to make them pay. Ha 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 ha, I'm so smart. Writers need to stop making her some kind of feminist icon. She's literally baby's first grippy sock girlfriend. Trying to turn her into some sympathetic Robin Hood for women's suffrage, like, dude, that's a disservice to the character of Harley, to Joker, to Batman, to Paul Dini.
All right, that's it. Dishonor. Dishonor on your whole family. Make a note of this. Dishonor on you. Dishonor on your cow.
Why did Bruce Timm allow this? Why? To play devil's advocate again, I will give points for originality, even though the execution was poor in my book. Loved Barbara. She was just the same character, but black.
What
No, all right. I know that sounds bad.
In this version, they made her a public defender that really wants to see the good in people and get non-violent criminals out of prison. You know, this reminds me of a post I saw on Twitter of how women are hell-bent on getting criminals back onto the streets because they're more likely to feel bad for bad people. What do the writers mean by this? It's weird because a lot of the discourse I see on Twitter about this show is that the women are fat, Barbara is black, and there are one too many lesbians in diversity hires for the 1940s. And I have to say, some of these complaints hold water. Let me explain. This show is set in the 1940s. It's very obvious based on the design of the Batman costume, and even more obvious based on the general aesthetic of the series, backgrounds, and technology. So it can be super jarring to people to see so much modernity in a series presented as a period piece. Now, I understand that this is fiction, and maybe the creators didn't want to focus on racism, sexism, and homophobia, but hey, as a racist, sexist homophobe, I think the show would have been better if it did. I think tackling those issues in a nuanced way would really have made this time period more believable as a setting. I mean, there are light hints at sexism, but I would have loved watching a Jim and Montoya that had to prove that they were more than diversity hires, a Barbara that wanted to prove that she could hold her own against Gotham's White Knight, and an openly lesbian relationship. Like, dude, why is it that Harley is just gay now? Like, why is this the new default for Harley? You really want me to believe they wouldn't be publicly shunned? Okay, keep her gay, but a better story could have been told if they were secretive about their love and were forced to meet in less than desirable places to show affection without persecution. I'm just saying, we missed out on some good story for the sake of having one's cake and eating it too. And trust me, I know Montoya's eaten. All right, before I let you 12 leave, the last character I wanted to talk about was Harvey. They played them pretty straight, and I like that. Even though he was a prick, arrogant, couldn't get enough of his own voice, he still wanted to do what was right and got himself mixed up in some shady business as a result, which led to him being attacked and disfigured and developing a sort of split personality as a result of the trauma and pretty much losing everything. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Why did he get acid attacked? What is this, Great Britain? I mean, I guess you could say that the flask of acid was the only thing this guy could sneak into the courtroom, but why not just wait till he leaves and shoot him? Weird execution. At least they didn't have him killing people right off the bat. Those two are fine, I'm sure. She's taking a gun with her on the plane. Now, this is the 40s I wanted to see. We used to be a civilized country. Batman has some crazy forearm strength. That grapple hook is the size of a starting pistol, and he one-armed himself in Selina. You sure this Batman is human in this version? I love that every episode ends with Batman recounting his thoughts in his Batcave, setting up potential story beats. A really big thing for this show's villains also is revenge. Most of the rogues are pushed to the brink of their sanity, and it's a platform for them to then give the people who put them in dire straits their just desserts. Me likey. The theme really compacts on itself to where eventually when it gets to Two-Face's creation and his lust for revenge after the mob put out the hit for him and it disfigured his face, he just literally goes on a rampage. Look guys, check this show out. At least 3 episodes. What's really ticking me off though is the amount of misrepresentation that I'm seeing on Twitter about this show, and it's from people who probably didn't see it. If you did watch the show and you didn't like it and you have your complaints, go for it. But if you're just making grand assumptions based on a couple of seconds that one of your favorite commentary YouTubers posted, like, dude. Again, people are allowed to dislike the show for these reasons, but it's weird that I haven't seen any complaints about Black Jim Gordon. I mean, like, did people dislike the 2021 Batman film? Oh, but I'm all here for the Harley hate. Fuck this interpretation of her. It's ass. And I wish I could find here it is. I know there are some people who are unable to clear the retardation from their think boxes, and then there's this guy. As I was going through, people complaining about the character designs for the show, notably Nerdrotic's take on the plus-size gender swap penguin. Oh yeah, she's a mother in this show. The thought of someone sticking it to her is a terrifying thought, to say the least. This nematode posted a screen grab of Catwoman and added the text plus-size Batgirl. Like, did you even watch the show? Where does this design scream Batgirl? Plus-sized. This is plus-sized? For a superhero, yes. That or she's wearing her jammies instead of a suit. Shut up. Whoever you are, you're a fucking tourist. At least when Nerdrotic or The Drinker have their complaints, it's because they actually know what they're talking about, because they sat down and watched the show. Even though I am a Batman fanboy, I really don't want to sound like I'm running D. I dislike shoehorn diversity as much as the next guy. I dislike misrepresentation of an entire time period as much as the next guy. But I think people should remember this. Because this is an animated property, I believe some creative liberties are allowed, and some should be burned with fire. You should also note that this show becomes a lot more enjoyable understandable if you see it as a one-shot and not the new continuity for Batman as we know it, you know, because it's not. There is just no way a show like this could fly realistically. I would say if these changes are inexcusable to you, then don't watch the show. But if you're like me and are willing to give something at least a try before writing it off, check it out. What I do really dislike is that if this show does well, then it'll only incentivize the powers that be to make more creative liberties with this property because they think they can still make money off of it. If you're refusing to watch the show because of that, then I won't stop you, brother. Keep up the good fight. Yo ho ho and all that jazz. Do not give them an inch. All in all, I think people should form their own opinions on the series, give it the old 3-episode treatment. That's only if you haven't already made up your mind. I'm not the thought police. And yeah, fight back against the agenda and all that boulder dash. The veil has been lifted and the people will speak with their wallets. Yap, yap, yap. I just won't sit here and let these niggas talk mess on my back out. What are you still doing here? A grown man is wallowing in his own pity. Peace.